All right. I'm so glad we have so many who are able to be here tonight. We are representing the Desert Dolphins Photography Committee, and we have two speakers tonight. While they're splitting the questions, they are both able to answer the questions, all the questions. In the chat, and I'll send it again in just a minute for those who came on after I sent it, are the questions. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at them. Addressing questions 1 and 2, we have Mark Green. Mark's diving journey began in Fiji, but a trip to Bonaire officially hooked him. He earned his dive master certification through No Limit Scuba in Tempe, where he lives. He began shooting with an Olympus TG6 and upgraded to an OM1 Mark II in a Nauticam housing. Through classes, workshops, and extensive research, he continuously refines his skills to shoot in biodiverse destinations. Because lenses can't be changed mid-dive, he carefully plans his shots beforehand. And so he will be talking about gear and pre-dive preparation and composition and framing. The other two questions, we have Greg Sherman. He grew up in Tucson, but never imagined scuba diving would shape his life. He got certified for a vacation in 2008, and it sparked a passion for diving, marine conservation, and underwater photography. He is self-taught behind the camera, but with persistence and practice, he has captured incredible images of the underwater world. He now teaches underwater photography, holds scuba instructor certifications from multiple agencies, and enjoys mentoring divers to become better ocean stewards. Mark and Greg are going to alternate. So we'll do questions 1, then 3, 2, then 4, and that will make sure that nobody gets cut off totally at the end. And at this point, I will turn it over to Mark to get us going. Thank you, Mark and Greg.
Okay, thanks for having us. Excited to be here. So I'm just talking about preparation to begin with. I'm going to share my screen now. All right, so it just so happens that I'm heading off to the Red Sea in a week or two, and I'm going to share some of the things that I've done to plan for that trip. Now I'm heading out for 2 back-to-back liverboards. The first liverboard is going south, which I've never been before, and the second liverboard is going north, which I've done multiple times, so I'm very, very familiar with that one. So the south, I had to learn about where I'm going, and I'm going to take you guys through what I did. So the first thing I did was, did the slides move on?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So the first thing I did is I went to the website of the company that I'm going with, and I looked at the route that I'm taking, and I got a dive site list of where they typically go. Now, I understand that this could change very easily based on the weather, but that gives me an idea of the itinerary of where I'm going and what I need to do to learn about these dive sites. So what I did next is then I went online and I found as much as I could about all the dive sites, and I printed everything to PDF about the dive sites that were on the list, and then I started to go through and read as much as I could about each individual dive site. Now you can see I started this back in April, so the research doesn't start just before you leave. I've been working on it for quite a while, so I'm hopefully familiar about what lenses I might have to use on each dive site, and any features or any special things that I might find on those dive sites that I can ask the dive guides to show me that I might want to take pictures of. So I'm just going to do one of these. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but so for example, the top one is Abu Dabab, and on that dive site, I read, and it's mostly here, that there's a rare red anemone. And I thought, wow, red's always a great color for underwater photography because it really pops, right? But it doesn't tell me what type of anemone it is. So then I went online and I started searching red anemone for that particular dive site. and I found people's pictures, and I learned that
Mm.
it's basically just an enemy fish anemone, right? So now I know exactly what lenses I need to take on that dive site to get really good pictures of this anemone. And that's a really striking red anemone, and it's rare. And with that, the orange and white of those particular anemone fish, that should make really good pictures if I can get them in good positions. So I'm just going to tell them to drop me there and come and get me afterwards. Right, so that's sort of the preparation that I do wherever I go. So for example, if you don't know what dive sites you're going to, I just like attack the dive guides and ask them, where are we going today? What are we going to see? If they know anything about photography, I ask them the best lenses to bring to put on the camera, and then I bring other lenses on the boat if I want to change, and I'm not afraid to change lenses in between dives. Okay, a lot of people are. I'm not. Leslie saw me do it a few times this weekend. I'm not afraid to do it. All right, so now I want to talk about real quick about how to prepare to dive. Now we've all seen this, right? We've seen the guy that has everything on his camera, and he goes in, he's prepared for everything. Well, what happens if I see this? What happens if I see that? Well, you only have an hour to dive, typically. 70 minutes if you're lucky, 80 minutes if you're shallow. You don't have time to do everything. So my philosophy is concentrate on one thing. Concentrate on doing one thing on the dive and do it well. And then what you can do is you can narrow down your camera to nothing. So this is a picture I took of Jen this weekend in San Carlos. And Jen's my protege. She's learning. And I'm like, you're just going to do close focus wide angle. So all she has on the camera, there's no focus light, there's no dangly bits, there's no nothing, just enough buoyancy. And that's all she has. She has a streamlined rig specifically to take close focus wide angle pictures. Okay. So that's all she's looking for. She's looking for subjects for that. And then looking at backgrounds, which I'm going to get to in the composition side of things. Now, I was asked a couple of things about just gear, and I wasn't going to delve into gear, but I decided to a little bit. And I'm going to go over what I do at the end of a trip because I started mentioning it, and people didn't know what I was talking about when I was on the trip, so I decided to document it a little bit more. So this is particularly to show you the shape of the O-rings on the housing here. So that O-ring there has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 curves. Okay. So if I'm going to store that camera, I will not store it with the O-ring in it. Because if you store the O-ring in that position, those curves will turn into memory of that O-ring. And if you don't put it on exactly the same way round, you can end up with points that stick out on that O-ring, and they're failure points. So I put that there to remind me to tell you guys that if I have something that shape, that O-ring will be stored off the camera. Then when I get back after a dive is I take a 2-pound weight and I wrap it in a cloth and I put it inside the camera like so. Okay. Then I seal the camera up, vacuum seal it, and I press every single button to get the air out of the button. Now, it's not just one press. It could be up to 10 presses. I keep pressing them until the air bubbles disappear. And then I just soak it. You can see the lights on there. It's vacuum sealed. It's going to sit in that bucket for 24 hours at least. And that's going to let all the salt leach out of all the buttons. Okay. And then I'll take it out. I'll dry the glass ports immediately. You do not want water spots to appear on your glass port. So always dry them immediately. When it's completely dry, then I'll store it away for my next trip. And what I do with the O-rings is I put them inside the housing and I'll store the O-ring inside the housing. That way I always know where the O-ring is. Okay. And the O-rings on the round ports, I don't take off because that cannot change shape, right? It's going to be the same shape no matter how I refit it on that port. So bearing that in mind, I don't change those. Okay, so that's the first presentation on preparation. Any questions on that? If
Do we have to type them? Do you use silicone on your O-rings every dive or every trip?
No. So if I'm diving in Lembe, the camera's down in the sand a lot. And if I open the housing and I see any sand anywhere, I will check. I will just clean the O-ring and put it back in. If I'm on a wide angle trip, I normally do it at the beginning of the trip, and if it's a week, probably not change them the whole time, not clean them the whole time, unless again I'm down in the sand. I put the camera down, and then I'll check everything.
Mark,
Yeah,
I'm
I'd like
just
to
curious.
echo on what Mark just said there. You need to be aware of what the conditions that your camera is in. If you're in the middle of a blue water trip and you're never down on the bottom, there is not going to be anything that gets into the cracks on the exterior of your housing that are that could then migrate onto the O-ring. But however, if you're in Bonaire and you're doing shore diving, or if you're in Lembe or someplace like that, then absolutely, if you open it up, and if you see sand there, then you need to stop and do some maintenance before your next dive.
Yeah, otherwise your whole dive could be ruined. Touching on that, actually, there's a company out there called H2O that insures your camera if it leaks. I forget where the link is, but I can post it on the group if anyone's interested. So my whole camera is insured. So I just insure one rig. So because I can't dive with more than one rig at a time. But so my most expensive lens, the camera, the housing, the strobes and everything is insured. And that way, if I do get a leak, everything's insured. It's
A
really
point on
important.
It's a
a point
great
on that,
idea.
Mark, is my home insurance insures all my gear.
Oh, cool.
You're
Okay.
using it
I used to use H2O for many
Okay.
years, but as of late, I just use my home insurance. They claim they will insure floods. I was just curious about when you said you uh, scope out your sites and what lenses you might use for those. So, for instance, the red anemone, what lens choice would you be using there? Because typically, I'm just looking at wide angle or macro for me.
Yeah, so it would be wide angle, but I'd use a wide angle zoom. So the object would be to fill the frame with the anemone and then wait in that location for the anemone fish to swim through. And then
But are
keep
you
snapping
are you
into
using a
pictures.
zoom, for instance,
Yeah,
a
that would be a
zoom?
zoom, wide angle
Okay,
zoom lens. Yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't be a
like
fisheye.
mid-range,
Sorry?
like a mid-range zoom.
Like a mid-range zoom, exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
Because
yeah,
you could zoom
okay,
in on that anemone, park yourself in front of it, zoom in on the anemone, so you don't want any areas around the edge that are not the anemone. That would be the way I would frame that. And then I
yeah,
would wait for the anemone fish to come into the frame and be in good positions within the anemone and then take the pictures.
nice. Thanks.
Mark, if I could add
Okay.
one more thing
Oh, go ahead.
regarding gear, and this I think is important when you're when you're on site, whether you're on a boat or on a liveaboard, it's absolutely critical that you have a procedure that you do not deviate from when you're setting your camera up at the location. For me, what that means is that before I get on the boat or before I hand off my camera to the dive guides to take to the boat, I have established a vacuum and I have let that vacuum sit for 10 to 15 minutes. And then I check it before it goes on the boat. I personally don't have any of the fancy lights. I've just got an analog pump, but I want to make sure that I have an established vacuum and that I'm not closing up my camera and then handing it off. I want to make sure that I've got that thing and it's sat on the bench long enough that I know that there isn't a leak. And personally, I will not let anybody interfere with that procedure. A dive guide may be screaming at me, "Hey, we got to go, we got to go, we got to go." Well, then you can leave. I'm not going to violate what I've done because a single dive isn't worth the however much money I've got tied up in that particular lens camera combination. It's important that all photographers establish their own way of doing it, and then they don't deviate from that method. Yeah,
That's a very
I just
good
want to
point,
add that.
Greg. Yeah, I do exactly the same thing. Don't let anyone interrupt you when you're putting your camera together. Just tell
Yeah.
them to come back. Leave me alone. Let me do this. And heading on from that, there's another point that Greg just made me think of. So I'll jump in the water with my lens covers on. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll jump in the water with my lens covers on, and it's not so much that I care about any issues getting into the water, is getting out of the water where the issues could happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when I'm on my safety stop, that lens cover goes back on, okay? And then that eliminates the dunk into the rinse tank. Because if there's other things in that rinse tank that could scratch your lens, that helps stop that. So I never jump in the water without a lens cover on my lens cap, on the front of the lens, and I tuck it into my wetsuit, and on my safety stop, it comes back out and goes back on the front.
So I do something similar, but what I do is because I know that I'll lose it if I tuck it into my shorts or into my BCD, it'll be gone. I actually have bungees that are attached to the dome port covers, the soft neoprene dome port covers, and when I jump in the water and I'm ready to shoot, I pull it off and it actually goes up underneath the camera behind the dome port, so it never is detached from my camera.
Oh,
So
that's
Mm-hmm.
there's
cool.
absolutely no chance of
Yeah.
me, sticking it down, down my wetsuit or around. I've seen people put it on their arms and their elbows. There's no chance of that happening with me, and it's always there, and it goes back up to the boat. And depending on the boat, I may ask them not to rinse it. I'll handle the rinsing my camera when I get up there because I know I'm not going to scratch it. And some of these guides, they're a little loosey goosey with stuff. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
be real.
That's a
Yeah.
great segue to Greg's first question, which
Oh,
is actually question number 3 about how to approach. Am I on the right one?
yep, you're on the right one. Yes.
I am. How to approach wide angle versus close up. What mental checklist do you go through?
So it's a different way of thinking when you're doing wide angle versus macro. On the wide angle side of things, which is really what I prefer, because I think it's more exciting. It's more dynamic. You don't know what's going to happen when you're shooting wide angle. Okay, the best that you can hope for is to put yourself in the right spot so that when the action happens, you're there to document it, to capture it, and to do it. So there's certain things that you can do to set yourself up for success. Number one is kind of understanding what you're going to be looking for, and understanding how close the subject is going to get to you. Uh, if you're in a spot that you can get really close to really big subjects, like my favorite place, Socorro, then go with the widest lens that you can think you're going to be able to get away with. For me, that's an 8 to 15 fisheye, because I know in that particular location that the subjects are going to get really close, and then it's a matter of patience and working to put yourself in the right spot. So understanding how tolerant the subject is to being approached, understanding and looking at where the sun is, what your background subjects are, is critical. And then a lot of it is just waiting and waiting and waiting, and then when the time happens, boom, hitting the button and being satisfied with just 1 or 2 passes for the course of the entire dive. Um, as divers, I really think that we get into a mindset that's like, oh, I want to see what's next. I want to see what's next. I want to see what's next. Well, if you're a photographer, that cannot be your mindset. Your mindset must be, I am here to capture the best image I can on this dive, and that may mean that I have 47 minutes of nothing. I'm just hanging out. But in that last 2 minutes, that's when it's going to happen, and that's a real critical thing. Also, because in wide angle everything is so dynamic, you have to really understand how your depth and your relationship to the sun impacts the technical settings on the camera. So you need to have the exposure triangle dialed in between ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. You got to have that in your head. You need to understand that if you're facing into the sun, that you're probably going to have more strobe. If the sun is behind you, you can get away with less. So that's important to understand that and have just an idea of what's going to happen. Macro is a completely different game. Going down macro, you've got so much time. You can set it up. You can find the subject. You can bring down an entire lighting studio with you. I mean, you can have a key light. You can have a backlight. You can have a strobe. You can have colored lights in the rear doing all kinds of stuff. So it's much more technical, and you have time because typically you can plant yourself and you can do it. The thing I think that's important though with macro shooting is that you limit yourself to, for me, it's no more than 3 subjects on a dive, and it may only be 1 subject on a dive. Because I'm going to work that subject. I'm going to work it until I get what I want and keep on going. I totally dismiss FOMO, so fear of missing out. You know, you get back on the boat and everybody's like, oh, I saw this, I saw this, I saw this. You know what? Good for you. Awesome. I'm super happy for you. I was very happy with the one weird nudibranch that I spent 55 minutes shooting. And I'm happy with that. So that all goes back to, as photographers, our dives are different than the normal people. The normal people are out there and they're seeing the entire reef. And we may only move 20 yards or 20 feet during the course of an entire dive. So that's part of the mental part that I go into it with. As far as how to approach a critter, again, it's understanding what the critter likes to do and how tolerant they are and how close you can get to them. Some animals you can get very, very close to. Some are super, super skittish. And understanding what it is and what your limitations are. You know, if you're trying to get up, you know, the absolute closest picture of a blue spotted jawfish as it's popping out of its hole, you're probably not going to get that because if you get close, they go down. But if you take the time and you dedicate 30 or 40 minutes to it, you can slowly move in and you'll get them more tolerant to you. And then you can get that shot. You know, the other thing is knowing what to expect. I just had a photo that did pretty well of a bobbit worm in Lembe. And that is something that's only going to come out at night. It's only going to come out on certain dive sites. And so I talked with my dive guide. I said, "Hey, listen, what can we see on this?" And you know, I said, hey, "A bobbit worm," and he said, "Yeah." And so we spent the entire dive looking for a freaking bobbit worm. We found it at about 10 minutes left in the dive. We didn't do anything else. That was the entire dive, was just looking for that bobbit worm. Found it, got it, super happy with it. And so again, it's just understanding what the behavior tolerances are from you to the animal. If you come in like a freight train, breathing heavy, they're all going to go away. Absolutely. Come in slow, come in low. And the reason why we want to come in low is because all these animals see predators come from up high. So when you come in from up high, they're going to see you as a predator. If you come down from low, they're going to be more tolerant of you. Slow down your breathing. Be super aware of how your bubbles impact the fish, and they absolutely do. If you can slow down your breathing to once a minute, then you're going to have a much better chance at getting some images.
One thing I'd like to add on that real quick, Greg,
Yeah.
is eye contact as well. Don't look at the subject that you're trying to get in front of. Kind of look at it out the corner of your eye with your head facing the opposite direction. Don't look at it until you're right on top of it, and then turn around and look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and something that just made me think of something is that the critters aren't generally afraid of your camera. They're generally afraid of you. So if you have a camera where you've got a live view where you can get back from that guy, all right, and you can put the camera down and you can even swim away from the camera, leave it on the bottom. Nobody's going to steal it. If it's weighted properly, it's not going to go anywhere. And your stuff should always be just slightly negative, by the way. You can leave it there and then you can come back to it after the critter's gotten kind of used to it, and you can get good results with that as well. The biggest thing is really just understanding what the critters' tolerances are. Talk to your dive guide. Watch how your dive guides interact with the critters. and other experienced divers.
Hey, Greg,
Yes.
how do you deal with, aside from having your personal guide, how do you go out and take your photos when there's this pressure to keep moving? And some of these dive
Yeah.
boats, they just want to keep moving. Or even if you have a guide, he's got three other people, and I guess if you had another buddy and just the two of you went out, that would work out.
Yeah. So that is on a case by case basis. The first thing is to try and have a discussion at the beginning of the dive or at the beginning of the trip before you ever get in the water. You want to be grouped with other photographers, okay? And then you have a discussion amongst your other photographers in your group about what do we want to do. And me personally, I really push for let's stay together, let's not go far, let's in a small area so the dive guide can kind of see that we're there. Um, have a conversation with the dive guide. Say, listen, we don't want to see the whole reef. We want to see a couple of spots, and we want to do it. There is an impetus upon you as a diver and a photographer to demonstrate to the dive guide, especially if you're there for like a week or something, that you are not going to be a liability for him. You don't want to make him think he has to worry about you keeping you alive. All right. So that means you need to be a good diver. You need to be able to manage your air. You need to be aware of the time. You need to be aware of where everybody else is. So there's a lot of massaging that needs to happen there. Me personally, I've got a strong personality when it comes to that. And I will just basically say, listen, you guys can go away. I don't care. I'm going to stay here. I know where the boat is. I know where the top is. But also that goes back to my experience and also familiarity with those guides. Not everybody is going to be able to pull that off. But if you've got a buddy or if you've got a group of four, and together as a group of four, you say, hey, listen, this is what we want to do. We want to sit on this and we'll rotate and share subjects. Totally cool. Remember that it is your trip. It is your vacation. You are the customer. And so if you've got a dive guide who's running you all over the damn reef, stop. Tell him no. This is not what we want to do. And I've had that problem too, where the dive guide, he thinks he wants to prove how good a swimmer he is. No.
Yeah.
We don't need that. We want to stay there. And so it all comes down to communication, managing expectations, and then respect for them because this is their livelihood when we're out there. This is their home waters. This is their thing. We're just there for a week. They're there for a long time. So that respect has to go both ways and we have to earn it and we have to give it.
And so one of the things that Jen and I will do, so we're in a group and we're the only photographers in that group, is we'll tell the dive guide, hey, look, is it okay if we just hang at the rear? We'll just hang at the rear. We know where we're going. Once they feel comfortable with us, not the first dive, okay, because they don't know who we are. But after a couple of dives, and they understand that we kind of know what we're doing, that's what we do. We say, can we hang at the back? Because we're going to go slower than everybody else. And we know the general direction. And we'll just surface if we lose you guys at the end of the dive. And I've never had a problem with everybody saying that. Sometimes there's two dive guides. One guy is in the front and the other's in the rear. And we've had the rear guy stay with us a lot and just make sure we're okay. And then he takes us to the group at the end. So there's always ways around it. But yeah, as Greg says, you got to communicate.
Yeah, you have to communicate. And you also need to remember that they're watching you from the moment that you pull up in your car. And if you're having problems setting up your gear on the boat, they're already looking at you like you're a problem child. So you need to demonstrate competence, intelligence, and respect from the minute you get on the vessel or make contact with them. It's that important because that's what they're thinking. And the dive guides, they will talk to each other. They will say, hey, Mark's really great, but Greg's you got to watch out for him because he doesn't know what he's doing. They will talk to each other. Absolutely. It's their work. It's their workplace.
Yeah, for sure.
Any questions?
Thanks. Although that's sometimes easier said than done, at least from my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be massaged and it's on an individual basis. In
Yeah.
Bonaire, they're freaking dive Nazis. And it's very difficult to get that type of freedom in Bonaire and in the Cayman Islands. Other places that I've been, it's much easier, and it just has to do with the culture of the dive guides. To the point when Bonaire, I won't even go on boats. I just do shore diving. I won't.
Yeah, that's what Jen and I do. We rent an Airbnb, just rent tanks and just go by ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
You have to be there 20 times before they listen to you, though.
Yeah.
They'll listen to me now.
Well, Leslie saved my rear end one time because I was almost into Bonaire jail when somebody did something I didn't like.
He's gone now.
Yeah, I know he is. Yeah. Anyhow,
All right. Additional questions?
The comments
Tom.
and tips you gave are really great. I made a lot of notes.
okay, good.
Really good stuff to follow. Absolutely. You've been doing that for a long time. And so for somebody new, very good advice.
Awesome. Thanks for the feedback, Tom. So, Greg, let's go back to you. No, we're back to Mark now.
Yep.
Sorry, on composition and framing.
Okay.
So when you are headed out to take pictures, what do you consider, or what's the most important rule or must-have element when you're trying to figure out what photo you're going to take this time?
All right, sharing my screen.
Yep.
Okay,
There it
so I'm going to go through just what I look for wide macro and for wide angle. Just real simple stuff where you should begin. First thing I'm going to talk about is the rule of thirds. I'm sure a bunch of you have heard of it. Most photographers have. I just want to touch on it a little bit because a lot of people, even though they've heard of it and they know what it is, they might not know how to implement it. Okay, so the rule of thirds is a composition guideline that places your subject in the left or right third of an image, leaving the other 2/3 more open. While there are other forms of composition, the rule of thirds generally leads to compelling and well-composed shots. If you imagine dividing a photo, or even your camera's viewfinder into 9 equal zones using horizontal and vertical lines that forms your rule of thirds grid, a setting you can select on most cameras and even on your phone. This might be a generational thing, but if you think about the Brady Bunch intro where you have the 9 identical rectangles, they're all the same size, and it's 3 by 3 rows, 3 columns. That means the corners of the central square are in the intersection points in your grid where you want to place the focal point of your shot. It's called the rule of thirds. But you can think of it as giving you 4 crosshairs in which to target shots important elements. This will help you balance your main subject with negative space in your shot to nail an effective photographic composition that will draw the viewer's eye. So I have my camera set up. This is a rule of thirds grid. I have that on the back of my camera screen. And I use it to compose images underwater. And I have the grid line set fairly thick. So on my camera, you can change those lines. And I have them set fairly thick. That way I can actually see them when I'm underwater. Now I'm going to take you through a couple of images and how they relate to the rule of thirds. So here's an image of just a goby on some coral. And I'll try and line it up in camera. If not, I'll crop it when I get back. And you can see how that relates to the rule of thirds. The goby is right on the line. Next image. It's just a little shrimp on the back of a nudibranch. But how it relates to the rule of thirds is the line goes right through the middle of the shrimp, and then the eyes are also on the line. And it just gives a really nice perspective to the image. Next image again. And then the rule of thirds line goes right through the eyes, with the eyes on the center points at the top. Next image is of a Denise pygmy seahorse. And I put the rule of thirds, I put one of the points on the eye. So that really gives the images really nice composition when you use the rule of thirds. Now, I only use the rule of thirds in macro so much. In wide angle, I don't use it as often. And I'll get to that shortly. There's another rule that I follow, and that's the leading lines. Leading lines are a compositional technique where human-made or natural lines lead the viewer's eyes through a photograph to the subject or the heart of the image. They can be very noticeable or they can be quite subtle. This compositional tool helps photographers direct the focus of the photo, creating balance and tell a story with the image. Like the rule of thirds, leading lines are a compositional element that can be used across all kinds of photography, from portraits to landscape shots. Another useful leading lines definition is leading lines can be anything. They can be a road or a line of trees leading you somewhere. They can be people and repetitive objects like railroad tracks. And while many photos may unintentionally contain lines that highlight a specific point of interest, intentional lines and compositions make for the strongest images. Whether you use bold straight lines or graceful curving ones, leading lines can elevate your composition and add a unique aesthetic to your photos. So for example, in this image, it's just a blenny and some hard coral. But the hard coral, the brain coral, creates leading lines towards the blenny. And in this image, I actually broke the rule of thirds and placed the image in the center. Which works for this image because the leading lines draw your eye towards the blenny. And in this image, I also broke the rule of thirds by putting the rhinophores right in the center. And I think this one works because it's balanced. The trizonians, I think they're called brysonians, that the nudibranch feeds on are balanced on the left and the right. So having the nudibranch in the center balances the image. I want to read to you a quick excerpt from Alex Moster's book, The Underwater Photography Masterclass. And it talks about lighting for wide angle. The limited penetration of strobe lighting means that backgrounds produce the most of the visual depth. Trying to develop a mindset that is a great subject is not enough for a stunning wide angle image. It must be complemented by a background for a finished picture. Compositionally, it often does not matter what the background is, rather it's having it there. That bequeaths the feeling of three-dimensionality. Effective backgrounds include silhouetted reef outcrops or specific outlines of sea fans, kelp, schools of fish, distant divers and dive boats, surface textures, sunbeams, and so on. Multiple elements are great, as more layers gives the viewer more depth to explore. When shooting scenery, experienced photographers will often look for a background first, such as a coral head, pinnacle, or overhang, and only then search close for a base for a foreground subject. A good background is harder to find and can be used with several foreground subjects. It is also why certain dive sites become famed for wide angle. Boo Windows in Raja Ampat, St. John's Wood in Egypt, Babylon in the Cayman Islands, Salt Pier in Bonaire, kelp forests and jetties. These places are all revered not because of their specific foreground subjects, but because they provide ready-made picturesque backgrounds. So, taking you through that, this is Babylon in the Grand Cayman. And there's the background, right? The background makes the image, it adds depth to the shot. And then all you've got to do is light the foreground nicely and then control your shutter speed to let enough light in to allow the background to form and compose behind the main image. Same with this shot. The background was first. And then I looked for a foreground subject to add interest to the image. In this case, it was the sponge. And then again, in the thistlegorm, the truck is a foreground image. The background image is some ambient light coming through a window in the wreck. And that just creates depth. And then the third image is in the fourth image is in the Red Sea. So I'm inside a wreck here, shooting some soft coral on the side of the wreck. That's the foreground image. The background is the wreck, slowing down the shutter to let the ambient light come through the cracks in the wreck, creates depth in the image. Sometimes you don't need depth where there's enough foreground matter to make the image work. This shot in Cozumel is a big angle scene where there's just so much going on, even though there is a background, it's not the main part of the image. The eye just has so much to focus on in front of the background that you don't really need the background per se in this image. And that's the end of that.
Like
Any
to add
questions?
a little bit to what Mark was saying about the backgrounds. The backgrounds, in my opinion, are every bit as important as the foreground, regardless if you're shooting macro or wide angle. In fact, in wide angle, it may be even more important.
It is, yeah.
We just got back from an epic trip again to Socorro, my favorite place, if you haven't heard about it. And I was with a number of fairly good photographers, I mean, and some videographers, and some of whom I traveled with before. And on day 2, I called everybody together and I basically read them the riot act because they're just taking pictures of mantas and sharks against the blue. You don't need 1,000 pictures of a manta against the blue. You got one good picture of a manta against the blue, it's going to look the same as another good picture of a manta against the blue. And I challenged them all to start working and start swimming and using those things at the end of their feet to move around and position themselves so that they could get the geography of Socorro in their shots. And it changed everything. Everybody's images went from, yeah, that's a nice ID picture, it's well lit, blah blah blah, to something that really becomes dynamic because you're putting the critter in an environment, not just against a blue backdrop. So a lot of times you need to swim around and find that good background, find the cool background, and then wait for it to happen. And if you're shooting macro, swim along and look for the cool anemone, not the anemone fish. All right. Take a test shot. See how that anemone lights up before you settle in for 30 or 40 minutes. Yeah, it may be a great clownfish, but if the anemone's crap, then what's the point? There is no point. Take the time, be conscious of your background, understand how to light it properly, understand if you're doing wide angle, how you're mixing ambient light with strobe light, and just pay so much attention to your background because that is the difference between a good image and what could be really an outstanding thing. Framer, contest winner, that sort of thing. Anybody?
Any questions?
Bueller?
So what?
Give
what
us a
does,
minute.
What does separate the contest winner from people that take good pictures,
Ooh.
following all the rules?
Greg's probably the best one to answer that because he's won lots of competitions.
You get pictures hung in the Smithsonian.
Yeah, that was true. So first thing is that it doesn't have to be a crazy, unusual subject. It needs to be the subject that is captured in a very spectacular way sometimes, or just really great way of capturing a normal subject.
Creativity.
Yeah, you need to the technical aspect needs to be there. There needs to be kind of a story, so it needs to be multi-layered, going in and out. The image that's oh no, that's a wrong different image. I've got I'm not gonna try and find it right now. But if you can create depth in your image, if you can create a way of making it highlighted that doesn't feel forced. I won a thing a couple years ago with a jawfish, and the jawfish. Let me see. Well, I'll keep talking. The jawfish was spitting out sand, and I got it against a black background and I was using a snoot, but the snoot was positioned in a way where the light fell off. So it's not like the boom, there's a snoot image, like there's a circular pool of light and black all around it, and the thing is highlighted. Um, it's more delicate than that. It's more of a softer approach. Um, Chances are, if someone says, or someone goes, "Oh wow," right off the bat, and not just Facebook friends. Okay, we don't want the likes. I mean, they're nice to have, but a like on Facebook means crap. It doesn't mean anything. But if it can evoke a feeling, then that really really helps. And there's also times when you have images and you think it's awesome, and it doesn't do squat on the concert circuit. It does, or on the contest circuit. It doesn't do anything. And then there's other times where you throw something in at last minute and it goes big time. When I won Underwater Photographer of the Year, there was an image that was of stingrays at Grand Cayman at Stingray City coming across, and there was a split image, and it's nice. It was good, but I'd actually thrown it away. And it was only because I was talking to a photographer friend of mine who said, "Hey, tonight's last night for this contest. You should enter it." I was like, "Ah, okay." And I pulled a couple together and I threw it in. Ended up winning the whole thing. It wasn't even my favorite image of that trip. So it's just you never know. And it's also, don't take it personal. If you throw something in there and it doesn't do anything, then well, that's the judge's problem, not your problem. Shoot for what you like on the wall. Shoot for pictures that you want to print out and look at every day. Um, that's how I kind of approach it. So there's no hard answer about, what's going to do. Chances are, a picture of a turtle in the blue is not going to do squat, you know. But if you have a picture of a turtle munching on a coral and there's three other turtles behind it trying to do something, maybe it'll do something on a contest, maybe it won't. You just kind of you'll know when you see the one in the background. I'm going to enter this in the contest next year, and I think it'll do something.
Yeah, so let me touch on that a little bit further. Also, things that win competitions are original images, things that have never been done before. So like when Snoots first came out, like all the Snoot images were winning everything because no one had ever seen the snooted image before. Blackwater came out, all the Blackwater shots were winning everything because no one had ever seen a Blackwater shot before.
Yeah.
So if you can be original and think of something different that no one's ever done, you'll do really well with those images until everybody else starts doing it. So you got to be an innovator as well. You got to find something innovative and do it first before anybody else.
Yeah, 10 years ago, going back, Goby in a bottle, what you see in Lembe, okay? Dave Dublé, way back, he did a picture. He was the first one to actually do Goby in a something. And he had Gobies in a Coke can off of Japan someplace. I thought that was neat. Well, then I got to Lembe, and we were in a contest. It was a live shootout, and I decided, I can do something based on that. But what I did was I put the Goby, it was a bottle, and I backlit the bottle so the bottle glowed on the inside, and then just highlighted the front of the fish. And I was basically, as far as I can tell, I was the first one out there anywhere doing backlighting through the base of the bottle to illuminate the inside of the home for the Goby, and then hitting it on the front. Now everybody's doing it, and I won contests for that, but you can see it just like Mark said, the trends will go and go and go, colored lighting was a big trend. Motion blur is a big thing right now. Doing pretty well with that. Yeah. So it's hard, and mostly just keep going, and look for contests that will give you feedback. All right. Not just contests where they're just trying to get your money, contests that will actually give you feedback on what they liked about it. That's one thing that I really like about UPY, Underwater Photographer of the Year, is that the judges give actual feedback, and it's valuable. It's good stuff.
I'd like to make a point. Greg talked about his Goby in the bottle. He did take first place with the Desert Dolphins.
I did do that one. Yeah, that was one. That one won multiple contests. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah. Well, it's on my Instagram.
When you look back at some of your shots that you're real proud about, is it typically out of the camera that way, or how important is your post on these images?
Are you asking me or Mark?
Both you guys.
Mark, go ahead.
So the best images don't need much work. The images that are not so good, that you put a lot of work into them, they never turn out as good, because the more post-processing you put into an image, the worse the image gets. So the best images are the ones that just need some basic stuff. That's it. So you got to get things right in camera, and that's really hard to do. It takes a lot of work, and something that I'm working on being better. Like I've only been doing this for 4 years now. This is my 4th year, and it's the thing I'm finding the hardest to do is get everything right in camera.
Yeah, I would agree with Mark on that. That getting it in camera, nailing it there is the most important. You can take a great image that you capture in camera, and with just a little bit of tweaking, you can make it spectacular. You're never going to take a mediocre image and take it up to that level. So that is the falls under the mantra of shoot, review, adjust, repeat. So you need to be aware of what's going on underwater and look at what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong and be critical, and do not ever have that mental thing in your head like, oh, I'll just fix it in Photoshop later. No, if you don't nail it in water, you're not going to be able to fix it. It ain't going to happen.
So if you've got a really good opportunity in front of you, don't leave it until you've got the shot.
Yeah.
I guess
Don't go, okay, I'm going to leave this now. That picture's okay. I'm okay with it. Don't leave it until you've got the shot. Stay there.
that goes hand in hand with taking your time and not feeling that pressure from the other divers around you or the guide, which I often feel.
Well, what you can do is, so you've got like a couple of people behind you, and you've still got another 30 minutes left of the dive, right? Just back off, let them in, take a couple of pictures, and then it's yours again.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, the chances are that the other divers, even if they're photographers, they're just going to come in, take their snaps, and leave.
Yeah.
And then you can actually go to work. And also gives you a chance to, after you've taken those first shots, well, Bob and Sue and Harry are over there taking their shots. You can be back and you can be reviewing what you have done with a critical eye, and then going back in once they're gone and making the corrections that you didn't have on the first go round. And also, just a little aside, if you're waiting for somebody and you're down at depth like 60 feet or whatever, don't wait right next to them. Go back, go up. Number one, you're not going to put the pressure on them where they hear your bubbles. And also, you're going to save your bottom time because you're not nitrogen loading by waiting at 60 feet and getting saturated. Just bounce up to 40 feet. Who cares? You can see what's going on, and you're going to load so much slower.
So we actually have one more question, but I feel like in your answers right now that you've kind of addressed it. But Greg, this one's back to you.
Oh.
Thinking about a difficult dive or a photo challenge from last season, what adjustment did you make in real time in order to get a good shot?
So aside from composition, which is only half of the equation on this, and I didn't even say it's half, it's like a third, I think. Lighting is the absolute most important thing. And underwater, because the fact that light is absorbed, 400 times faster underwater than it is air, something like that. It is incredibly important to really understand how your strobes work and how they're going to work in that situation. I always try and visualize my strobes as a cone of light that goes out, and you don't have to use the whole damn cone. You can use an edge of it. In fact, frequently you're really better off just using an edge. But understanding what it is and being critical about how your movements impact the quality of light that you're going to have. So let's just say you're shooting macro, and let's just say your distance is, you're that far from the subject, all right? Well, if you come back and you review, and now instead of being this far from the subject, you're this far from the subject. So you're an inch, maybe 2 inches further than you were, or closer. Your lighting situation has completely changed because of how fast it's getting absorbed. So it is really critical to understand how your lighting is being affected by your position relative to the subject. And also, when you are reviewing, make sure that you get back into the same spot, because if you're trying to do multiple variables at the same time, you're just going to get frustrated, and it's not going to work.
So like interjecting on that real quick. A good skill to learn is to know where all the buttons are on your camera without looking up. So
Yes.
you can stay in exactly the same position and review your image and make any changes you want without moving the camera or the lighting.
Mm.
And then you can continue on. That's difficult to do because the first thing you want to do is get up and like look at it. But if you can learn to stay down in position in macro work and change your settings and review your image without moving, your photography will improve so fast.
Yeah, and also based on what Mark says, is every time you move that camera, guess what? You're kicking up a bunch of sand.
Yeah.
And so you're just making it worse on yourself. Being down there and being able to view it without moving the camera, knowing where all of your buttons are. I mean, like really knowing where they are. And so you can do it. And then if you do want to review it, Mark's got one of the new fancy dancy cameras where you can actually see it inside the viewfinder. I don't have that. I'm old and I've got one. So what I have to do is when I take the picture, I have to pull my head back and look down to see my screen and then go back. So I have developed the ability to come back myself, my entire body, and look and then come back in, or just my head, whatever I have to do. But that camera stays in the same spot. And also, that also it scares the fish less. So it makes them less weirded out by that big thing moving. Um, when to use one strobe, when to use two strobes, when to use no strobes. Macro, think one strobe all the time. Always think one strobe. It's going to give you better contrast. It's going to give you shadows, which give the subject depth. It's going to make it more interesting. If you're using two strobes, almost always you're just washing out the light. So as you're starting off on the journey, single strobe on macro. Wide angle, remember that after 10 feet, you're not lighting up anything. Even if you have the monster new strobes from backscatter, maybe 15 feet, because that light has to go from you, reflect off the thing, and then come back. And 30 feet underwater for lighting is forever. So you understand what it really is going to do, and you think, well, I can just turn up my strobes. Well, if you just turn up your strobes, what you're really doing is just dumping more light close to you, and any sort of backscatter or any sort of flare that's going to be picked up by your wide angle lens is going to be even worse. So understanding the limitations of what your strobes can do, how to utilize the natural light, all super, super important. And a lot of it's just miles on the road, just going and doing and doing and doing. One thing that we haven't talked about, I just want to talk about real quick, is do something different. All right. Once you've got the ability to take the fish ID shot, okay, where it's properly exposed and properly lit, it might be flat, it's centered in your frame. Great. So you got that shot. Don't take that same shot and take the picture of this nudibranch and then this nudibranch and then this damselfish and this crab and this octopus. Mix it up. Change your lighting. Same subject. You get the same photo, two photos. Okay, cool. Move your lights. Change them around. Try some top lighting. Try some side lighting. Try some back lighting. All of those things, mix it up, and you're going to learn more about how the light behaves underwater. You're going to learn about how the light behaves in that particular environment. So San Carlos is way different than how light works in San Diego or in Bonaire or in Lembe. It is completely different. So don't sit in the same box and just keep taking the same darn photo over and over and over again with a different subject. Do different things. It's just going to expand your ability as a photographer, and it's going to keep it interesting and make your portfolio much more diverse. Mark, any thoughts on that?
No, I think you covered a lot.
Okay. Yeah, just understanding how the lighting works, and then understanding what you can do with your camera and the limitations of it. I mean, if you've got a macro lens on, you got a fixed 100, or if you're a micro 4/3 or a 4/3 guy like Mark, a 60, you're not going to get a picture of the turtle. Don't even bother. I mean, say, oh yeah, that's a good looking turtle, and then go find a nudibranch. And the same thing, if you've got a fisheye lens on, don't take a picture of the pygmy seahorse. Go find something else that's better. There's no reason to waste your very limited time underwater trying to have your camera do something that it just can't do. If you've got a little TG6 and there's a cuttlefish that is 20 feet away, and you've got a small strobe, you're probably not going to get that critter. So go find something else that you can shoot, unless you just absolutely want to see the stuff. But if we're underwater and we're there to take photos, then we need to do everything we can to maximize the quality of the photos that we're getting and the
I like
impact.
I like the idea now of sticking on one subject for a whole dive and just trying different techniques.
Yeah.
Instead of just rushing around.
I mean, I've got subjects, winners that I've spent 4 or 5 or 6 dives on, just
Yeah.
the same thing, just to get the one that I want.
Yeah.
People think I'm crazy. I'm like, no, this is what it takes sometimes to get what you're after.
Yeah. Well, you guys have definitely shown the magic in photography, and I'm still chasing the magic. There's something about people that it's more than just, oh yeah, these are all the techniques. There's something more, and I call it the magic, and I hope I can find that someday.
I think part of it is, and Mark I agree with this, is it's a passion for what you're doing.
Yeah.
That is the thing. When I got to about 200 dives, honestly, I was getting bored. I was like, I'm seeing the same thing over and over again, blah, 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 blah. And then there was a diver, Leslie may remember, Chris Currents. I was on the Spirit and I was looking at his setup. He had a 5D Mark I setup. And I was just curious about it. And he was nice. And he said, you know what? If I see you underwater, I'll hand it off to you. And you can take a couple of frames. And I was shooting a sea life at the time. So it was bad. And so I remember him finding me underwater, and I took a picture of my dive buddy. And in my head, when I clicked that button, it was like, oh, that is different. And that
Yeah.
was the first hit of the drug that got me. And that has kept me going I'm pushing 5,000 dives now. So that was the thing. So the passion is there, and the artistry and the combination of geekery and physical exertion and competition for me and is what's kept me at it.
Mine is just a passion to get better. I just want to get better at what I do. I enjoy it. I used to be, believe it or not, a competitive angler, and I fished tournaments and represented the United States overseas 13 times. And my passion used to be that, and that's all I wanted to do. And I got to the very top of the game doing that, and I don't do that anymore. And now I put my energy into this. So it's just one of those things. I have a passion for
Yeah.
being creative, and now it's directed to underwater photography.
I think also it's important to shoot for yourself. Don't shoot for
Yeah.
judges. Don't shoot for other people. Shoot for something that you love, and that you can print out the images and put them on your wall. Having them live on your hard drive or having them live on Facebook or Instagram is okay, I guess. But if you see it every day, every time you see that image on your wall, it takes you back to that moment, and you relive it, and it brings you new joy, and the value of it just increases.
Yeah. I have another question. Not a photography question, but Greg, you just said you came back from Socorro.
Yeah.
And I imagine you took a lot of expensive gear with you.
Mm-hmm.
Did they nail you at Cabo at the airport?
Okay. So I have paid before, and when I paid before, I kept a copy of the receipt. And so now when I get diverted, they they look at my receipt and I just get to go. I have lots of people who have had to pay. It is it's not a good thing. It is I view it as part of the deal to go down there. I have never had anybody who's had to pay more than once. So they keep the receipt and they keep the serial number and they check it.
One-time thing now?
Yeah, it's a one-time thing.
Okay.
And it is unfortunate. I have had people who have paid with a credit card and then challenged the charge successfully.
Oh,
Which I think is the way to do, because it's an absolute shakedown. I mean, we could do a whole hour on that.
yeah.
It's unfortunate, but I would say do not let that stop you from going to Socorro. Socorro is the absolute best place in the world for big animal diving. So it's part of the cost of admission. And
So, Greg,
yeah.
some people may not know what you're talking about.
Oh, sorry.
Share with everybody what's.
Yeah, so when you go into Cabo and you go through customs, if you've got a camera, you may get diverted and have to pay basically an import tax, even though you're taking it out of the country. It is something it cropped up when the Mexican government said that the military is now going to control the customs portion of it, and this is something that they've implemented. It is, in my opinion, is direct contravance to their customs laws, but it is what it is. Sometimes you can get through without anybody nailing you. Sometimes you will get set aside. There are certain things that seem to increase your odds of getting set aside. If you're going in with a ton of bags, they'll get set aside. If you're going in with Pelican bags, Pelican cases, you're definitely going to get set aside. The number of bags that you have, you may get set aside. So that's the thing is it's really frustrating because there's no continuity or consistency to it. It just is what it is.
And it's just Cabo, not Cancun.
No, it's Cabo, it's
Cancun too.
Cancun, it's Cozumel, it's Loreto, it's
yeah.
everywhere.
So
Any
that's
place that's a dive destination. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So what Jen and I do when we just went to Cancun in January, and we dressed up as tourists. None of our gear had dive emblems on it.
Yeah.
We didn't have any photography bags or anything. We put like the fancy tourist hats on and the fancy tourist clothes on, and just breezed right through. So if you have anything that says you're a diver or you're a photographer, you're going to get stopped.
Yeah. Don't advertise.
Don't advertise. Yeah.
You know, I go through with I don't even have dive bags anymore. I use Pelican rolling duffels, shove all my stuff in there, and I just go through and my camera kit. I can get most of my camera gear into a backpack. And so I just walk on through like I'm nobody else or everybody else. Yeah. And sometimes you get diverted, sometimes you don't get diverted.
And what is the percent?
It's 16% of whatever they deem the value.
Oh, God.
So they'll look up your housing on the internet and charge you the new price.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Tax on the
Oh
new
my
price.
God.
Well, you can also have a receipt. And so I've got a WACP, which is an $8,000 piece of glass. Well, I happen to have a receipt from Backscatter that says it's used, and I paid $1,500 for it. So I'm willing to give out some information that shows a lower value of my equipment. So it is what it is. But don't let it stop you from going.
I was going to go to Socorro, and that's kind of stopped me because
don't let it stop you. I mean, Socorro, all right, Socorro's $5,000 before you look up. Okay. Socorro's $5,000 before you look up. So you're going to let $250 or $300 on an extra, on a charge that you don't like stop you from the most amazing diving in the world? No.
Well, if you're bringing 12 grand of equipment, then that's $1,800.
Well, nobody's, I haven't heard anybody. The highest I've ever heard is $700.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean,
normally the housing they tax you on.
Yeah, they're only taxing you on the housing. Yeah,
not the lenses.
No, just the housing typically.
Oh.
Yeah. So don't let that stop you. It stinks, but honestly,
wait, the housing, not the body.
No, just the housing.
Just the housing. Yeah.
So what they class it as 2 cameras, even though it's not. So they class the housing and the camera as 2 cameras, and they tax you on the most expensive one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's good. And if you may not get hit. It's one of those things. So if you have further questions about Socorro, anybody reach out to me. I'm coming up on my 35th or 36th trip there.
Wow.
Next March. So if you have questions, I would be happy to answer it. I am literally the world expert on Socorro.
Damn, dude.
I will reach out to you.
36 times. Wow.
Yeah, I've got like 800 dives there, something ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't even have that many dives.
Well, it's a sickness, man. So,
Greg,
yes.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
I just
yes.
happy birthday.
All right.
Thanks
Anything
so
else,
much, guys.
Yes, we are coming up we kind of went over a little bit, but I did say till 8 o'clock originally. But thank you both very much for the time that you took to think through this and to help us. And thank you for sharing your expertise. I think everybody, just in a little bit of feedback, that great information, and I think it'll help us all in our own underwater photography. I did put Greg and Mark's Facebook information in the chat. So if you haven't done it yet, go ahead and click on the links in the chat so that you will have them available to you after the chat closes. But with that said, we are going to post this to our YouTube channel as soon as it processes and we clean it up just a little bit. So you can go back and get this later. Thank you again for attending
Thanks
and
so much,
for presenting.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
that's
hope you
great.
enjoyed it.
I just
Yeah.
put my
Great.
Instagram. I just put my Instagram up on the chat. I'm
Oh,
more
good.
active